Welcome back to Adventures in Adversity. I am your host, Bree, and if you are new to the podcast, I am too. No, just kidding. 2 seasons, but I'm learning. I'm basically this podcast is a place for people from all over the world to share real stories about how they have turned life's adversity into an adventure. We all know that adversity comes in many, many forms, and I am more than grateful, beyond grateful to have somebody on the show today who I think knows a thing or two about adversity, about overcoming it. And then my favorite part is giving back to others who are going through it. So, with that, I would like to welcome you, Rob. Thank you so much, Rob Scheer.
Bree, thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for doing this podcast. I truly do believe that every single one of us has a story. We all have a story. And
Yeah.
it's all in how we tell our story, because I guarantee you, when you tell someone's story, the impact that you make, sometimes you can't even measure it, but there is a true impact. So thank you so much for having this platform.
Hey, you know what? Thank you. And it's been a journey of amazing self discovery. And then what you just said, I look around. Sometimes I'll be sitting in a cafe and I go, wow, every single person could be on the podcast sitting here. Every single one. Like,
Everyone.
there's not one person that does
Exactly.
not have a story. And then somebody gets something out of it that's like,
Exactly.
right?
And the thing I remind everyone is that, as we look around at our communities, and by the way, your community is not your zip code. Our communities are human race. And so as we look around, we truly must understand that each and every one of us fall. All of us fall. The difference is how we get up. That's the
Yeah.
difference. Is how we get up. But every single person, there is not a person on this planet that has or will not have fallen in their lifetime. The difference is how they get up.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, you Rob, your story, I've just been like reading about you, watching you on videos, and I'm going to put all the links to all the beautiful organizations and books and things you've done and we're going to get into that. But human to human, we all have adversity, but I will say the adversity in your life started very early.
Very early. Very early. The fact is that when those who pick up my memoir, Forever Family, I start the book out immediately in exactly what it was like to be a little boy like me. The youngest age that I remember was probably 2 or 3. And, again, my mother and her um, decisions. And I say that because when I was younger, people used to always talk about the fact that my mother and my father were products of their environment. And, the
Mhm.
fact that they had 10 kids, my mother had been married 6 times. We lived in and out of every shelter in Maryland, Virginia, DC. I am 59 years old, Bree. And to this day, I'm still reminded every day of the horror I lived as a little boy because of the scars of the cigarettes that my father would put out on me. And see, that was my family. That's exactly that what was delivered to me. And when people would say that, oh, your parents were just a product of their environment, that's not true. Not true at all. We are product of the choices that we make. The choices that we make. Now, mind you, those choices not are always amazing and great, and they definitely weren't for my siblings and I. But my mother was not a product of her environment. She was a product of the terrible bad choices that she made throughout her life, which then in return we inherited as kids with the trauma. And then to come into a shattered system, just continue to keep repeating that total less of self-worth that I felt as a little boy.
I'm so sorry you experienced that. You know,
Yeah.
I really, it's something. Obviously, you've, like you said, it's what you do when you get up, and you obviously have gotten up and run. But that's something. Thank you for just because you're 59 and you've processed it and you talk about it doesn't mean that it's not something it's informs your life, right?
It affects me daily. It affects me daily. First of all, I have to give a big shout out to Dr. Rich, my therapist, who I actually have a love hate relationship with for many, many years. I can't imagine my week going without having Dr. Rich. And so, for those of you who are thinking about therapy out there, do it. Um, Therapy is truly something that has helped me be able to use coping skills to deal with the trauma of a young boy who at 59 still I see that within myself, that feeling of the imposter syndrome, this
Ah,
feeling of I'm not worthy, the feeling of how did I deserve to have a life now like this after, and so yeah, there's still a lot of work. And by the way,
yeah.
I've said this so many times and I'll say it again. I did not wake up at the age of 18 and decided I was going to have this miraculous life. Okay. I was a kid who turned 18 years old in a foster care system that we see so many kids like me who turn 18 or 20, whatever the state is allowing now. Back when I came in out of the system in the 80s, it was 18 throughout the country. And, instead of someone, greeting me on my 18th birthday with love and, just way to go. You made it to 18. You're a senior in high school, which, by the way, no one in my family graduated. Nobody. And, when you look at kids in foster care out of the 400,000 we have lingering in the system, one child every 2 minutes, 700 a day that enter foster care,
Oh,
only 54% of them, Bree, will actually graduate high school. That's it. And I was a senior in high school. And that fall day in 1984, instead of somebody being there to really celebrate me as a
yeah.
as a now a young man,
Yeah.
instead what I was handed was my trash bag. And I literally became homeless, sleeping on the streets of Northern Virginia my senior year of high school.
After you had battled through all of that trauma and like, yeah, it's
Walked into my foster home at 12. They never once put a picture of me on the wall. They used to do these family portraits and they would take their three biological kids and they would get portraits and I was never in them. They never bought my school pictures as they bought their three biological children's pictures. Their kids got to go on sports. I never got sports. The kids got on field trips. I didn't go on field trips. The kids got to go on vacations. I didn't go. That's a typical kid in foster care. But for me, somewhere within my heart, they had to have loved me. I called her mom. I called him dad. You know, um,
yeah.
but it wasn't until that day in 1984 that I realized that I was no more than just a check. The check stopped coming. And so when the check stopped coming because I was 18, I stopped having a place to live. See, 22,000 kids in the United States will age out of foster care in 2026. Out of those kids, we'll see close to 70% of them become homeless within 24 hours. See, society has only given kids in foster care three choices. That's it. Choice number one, we give up. We give up. Suicide rate in foster care, Bree, is higher than we've ever seen within our country. Choice number two, we give in. We give in. We do exactly what you expect of us. You put the F word in front of our names. We commit those petty crimes. We fill your detention centers. As your listeners and viewers are gathering to listen and watch this, they need to understand that 80% of our death row inmates were in foster care. If that right there does not tell you that we have an actual group of children that are forgotten, nothing else will. And by the way, Nelson Mandela said it clearly to all of us. Each and every one of us are judged in society by the way we treat our children. By the way we treat our children. Kids in foster care, they don't belong to you. They don't belong to your viewers. They don't belong to me. They belong to us. To us. See, the thing is that our elders would say to us quite often, you invest in a child, you invest in their future. That is a lie. It's not true, and stop saying it. When you invest in a child, you actually invest in my future. You invest in your future because they are our leaders of tomorrow.
Wow. Those statistics. Thank you so much for sharing them because I don't know that people are aware of that. And if they are aware of that, and that is an epidemic, right? And beyond. And it's almost like it's just something that we all have to like open our eyes to, right? And the
Yes.
statistics there. I mean, growing up with parents, growing up in a typical situation is challenging, and it's challenging being a human being. Then layer on that, layer on trauma, and then layer on that feeling of always being forgotten, right? Sounds like
Yeah.
you growing up, you're there but forgotten, but you were probably searching for like somebody love me, and like what can I do to make you love me,
Yes. And that's
right?
exactly what it was. I mean, I used to wake up in the mornings and I would clean their kitchen before
Oh
they asked me
my
to. I would
gosh.
watch their biological children all the time because they would say, these are my biological kids and this is our foster kid.
No.
And so I grew up with that instilled within me. So to be rejected at the age of 18 and handed that trash bag again, like it was handed to me when I was 12, um, was an absolute shock to my system. And the thing that really blew my mind out of everything that I look back and I think about, um, close to 41 years ago, when I walked across that stage on graduation day, I'll never forget it, Bria.
Mm.
I had been, I had like a part-time job making $3.35 an hour at the local taco place. Because by the way, everybody, that was minimum wage back then. And the owner found out that I was the token homeless kid. And so he would make the managers leave the outside bathroom door unlocked so I could sleep there at night. And so I would
Oh my
wait till the kids
gosh.
left the cafeteria and I would gather in the trash can and I would gather as much food as I could that, those kids didn't eat because I didn't know if I'd eat that night. And I remember as I would cower in that bathroom with the light on doing homework. And by the way, there were nights that it would be so cold. I would go to the public library because it would close at 9 o'clock. And I would go inside and I would sneak in the very back and I would hide and wait for them because back in those days they didn't have cameras and alarms
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I would wait for them to turn the lights off and I'd sleep there at night because I just wanted to be warm. And so, that's
What
the way
you
my
gotta
life
do.
was. October, November, December, January, February, March, April, and then May came. This long haired, scrawny, dirty kid. I went down to the principal's office and I remember asking the secretary if I could please borrow a cap and gown because I couldn't afford to purchase one. I think they were like $30 to rent a cap and gown back in those days. And she found me one. And I remember that I put the cap and gown on and I stood in the mirror and I said, you know what, Robert? You did it. You did it. When nobody else believed in you, you believed in yourself. And I went and stood in line. And I remember people were clapping and screaming and cheering.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they called my name. It was silence. It was silence. And I realized at that moment that the trash bag did its job. It made me invisible, disposable, as if I didn't matter. I left that stage. I never went back to my seat and I left the auditorium. And at that time, I went to the back parking lot and I sat down and I cried. I cried for my mom and dad. Brie, I wanted to feel that cigarette so bad being put out on me because I knew that if my father was there putting a cigarette out on me, at least he was there. At least he was there. And then I cried for my foster parents. I mean, how dare they? How could they give up on me because of a check? And then I cried for you, everyone, my community, who felt that this young boy who had tried so hard just to be loved, that no one even clapped for me. At that moment, I realized what my community was teaching me. They were teaching me to think about me, me, and me. So, what did I do? I joined the United States Navy. And by the way, I did not join the Navy to take care of you, your family, or anyone that's listening. I joined the Navy because this boy was hungry. This boy wanted a future, and this boy made it. I became a very successful businessman. I literally was in the mortgage industry for 28 years. I had companies all over this country. I did exactly what I needed to do. Number one, my husband and I have been together 21 years. And
Uh-huh.
so what I did was the first thing was I bought that big house in DC, the one that people would walk by, they'd look at it and they'd be like, wow, whoever lives in that house, they're successful. I bought a really expensive car. I bought two of them because when I pulled up at the stoplight, I wanted you to look at me. I wanted you to shake your head and say, wow. Whoever was able to buy that car, they're successful. And then I filled my bank account so fat I could take you all to Disney World because, see, that's what was important to me until 17 years ago. See, the fact is the only thing I ever wanted in my life was to be a dad. To be a dad. I wanted a kid to look at me and know that no matter what they did, I loved them. I wanted a kid to feel the true definition of unconditional love. I wanted a child to know that no matter what, they were safe and that they were wanted. And I remember when my husband and I decided to start building our family, this almost close to 18 years ago. And
Wow.
I thought we would adopt a baby overseas and
Uh-huh.
be that cute gay couple in the city with the expensive stroller. And my husband looked at me and he said, we're going to adopt out of foster care. I said, what? He said, we're going to adopt out of foster care. I said, are you crazy? I was like, I know about those kids. He was like, Rob, you are one of those kids. God, he's so right. By the way, he's got his master's. He's really
I
smart. I don't
see.
even know the difference between there, and there.
Oh,
So he was right. I was one of those kids, Bree, and I was so worried about what everybody else thought about me. I forgot about all those kids.
gosh. Th- that's an incredible story. And it's not, and the stories, you haven't even told the whole thing, but that is that moment of realization. And then kudos and love to your husband for, he sees you, he knows you. Like, and then
Yeah.
for him to be, he, well, and you're going to get to what that all led to, but I'll
Yeah.
continue, please.
So the
That was
crazy thing
very
is
powerful.
my husband actually grew up totally opposite than me. My husband Reese grew up in the Midwest. He
Okay.
is very well educated. He has several degrees, a master's, and
Yeah.
his life has always been about education and his career and so for me to meet him. And by the way, as I wrote my memoir, I'll name drop. Derek Jeter actually was the one who convinced me to do my memoir, and Simon and Schuster, and they published my memoir. And I'll never forget when someone called me after reading it. They said, "You know what we got out of this memoir?" And I said, "What that?" They said, "It's a love story." I said, "A love story?" They said, "Yeah, to your husband." And I went back and I read it again, and I was like, "It is true," because I want people to understand that for me, and as any kid who grows up in this system, we have trauma.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I suffered from drug addiction. I had 4 suicide attempts. And it wasn't until I was 26, maybe, I had my 4th suicide attempt. And I woke up in the hospital, and I'll never forget it. I remember looking up and saying, well, you can't even do this right. And by the way, business was fine. I was my mental part I couldn't deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember I got out of the hospital and I found where my parents were buried. And I had not been to their grave since I was like 12. And I went to their grave. And I remember it took me hours to find where they were actually buried. And I found this little silver strip that the funeral director helped me find, and was my mother's. And I remember falling to my knees, and I remember saying to my mom and dad that I forgive you. I forgive you. I
Mm.
forgive you for touching me when you shouldn't have touched me, for keeping food from me, for scarring my body and my mind. But the thing I did was I forgave them because I needed to take the power back. And I said to them, I'm not forgiving you for you two to rest here in peace. I'm forgiving you so I can move forward in peace. I have to tell you that after that day, I have never once done a drug. I have never once tried to kill myself. Do I suffer from depression? Hell yes. Look what I went through, and yes, I take my little pill a day that I absolutely make sure it's regulated.
Yeah.
But the thing is that forgiveness is a powerful, powerful thing if it's used in the right way. And people need to understand that forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for you to take the power back that they took from you.
Yes. Yes. I'm so glad that that moment happened for you, as hard as that must have been.
So am I.
Like, I'm so glad that like that transformative moment where it sounds like the holding on to the anger and all of that, it eats you and kills you
It
inside
does.
slowly.
It
And
does.
then it's a slow death, and then the suicide attempts are an attempt at a fast one, and it's both are awful.
Yeah. And the fact is that you have to look at, remember, I told you in the beginning, I'm the youngest of 10 kids. My mother had been married 6 times. She had 10 kids. And the saddest part is my brothers and sisters didn't make it. They fell to the wayside. Teenage pregnancy, drug addiction, incarceration, you know, suicide, cancer, all of the things. I have 3 siblings, 4 siblings that are left. And I don't have relationships with any of my siblings. And again, that is a choice.
Mhm.
And the thing is that I have chosen in my life to not blame the system. Okay. I have chosen to use my life and my platform to change the system. And so
Mm.
for me, the constant finger pointing and blame doesn't change anything. And so, it's like my sister. I tried to tell her years ago. It's like, listen, you are actually doing everything that mom and dad did, because you're allowing that. You're blaming all the choices you're making because of what they did. No, you're doing it. And sometimes people just don't get it, and that's okay. But
Yes,
that's just not the
yes,
way I want it to continue
yes,
down my
yes.
path.
Well, and I'm so glad what you said because it's a perfect segue. You took that moment of forgiveness. You decided that your life is going to be, instead of blaming, it's going to be change, which brings
Change.
me to what you
But yeah, but I have to tell you, I wasn't
okay.
looking for the change that I'm
You
doing now.
you
I
weren't
was looking
looking
to
for that
change from
early.
me.
Okay, so
See,
you
I come from the .com world. We're takers. I never thought I'd
I'm
be in the .org world where we're givers. But that
oh my
changed
gosh.
17 years ago on January the 15th. It'll be 17 years tomorrow. And yes, everybody, we're recording this early. Um,
Yes.
17 years ago, my husband and I did all the things we needed to become foster parents because we were going to foster to adopt. Back in those days, 17 years ago, we said foster to adopt. Nowadays, if you say that, they'll shut the door in your face. And so the phone rang. And the social worker said, "Hey, Mr. Scheer, guess what?" I said, "What?" They said, "We got 2 kids." I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute. I only wanted one." And they said, "But we have a brother and sister. We have a little girl who is 4 and her brother who is 2. You will be their third placement. They're going to be reunified with their birth mother, but they need a place to sleep tonight." And I remember saying that I'll see you at 7 o'clock. And as I called Reese at his job, Reese had always said that if they ever called us for a set of siblings, we would never split the siblings up, because I was split up. And Reese was like,
Yeah.
Reese grew up with his sibling. And by the way, as I said, Reese grew up in the Midwest, parents married 50 some odd years.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even think Reese ever said a cuss word in front of his
Yeah.
parents. Or, so I mean, totally different than I grew up. And all of a sudden the doorbell rang. And when I opened up the door for the social worker, there she was with this cute little boy and this beautiful little girl. But the shocking thing, I mean, the thing that shocked me the most is that they had a trash bag, and they had their belongings in it. Bree, that for me was, um, that triggered me
Oh
because
gosh.
I carried that trash bag, and by the way, I not talked about it. I had,
Oh,
it had
never.
not,
It was
it
buried
wasn't
way deep
something that,
down.
yes, it was
Way
not in
down.
my
Yeah.
vocabulary. It wasn't something that I shared. But
Nope.
when I saw it, it
Oh.
was this flood of emotions. And I remember that the night, we got the kids immediately restarted looking through the trash bags. And, my kid, they didn't even, my daughter didn't even have a decent nightgown. My son didn't even have baby's blanket, didn't even have a stuffed animal. And Reese and I had gone shopping, and we had shopped like you would not believe at Target. I
Yeah.
mean, we had filled several carts up,
Yeah.
pajamas and toys, and we were ready to be dads. And I remember Reese got a Maya in the tub, and there were all these bubbles, and there were these bubbles around this beautiful brown face. And I remember saying to Reese, "I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life." And I said, "And I am a dad to the most beautiful little girl. You know, I want to remind you and your viewers, people need to understand something. Women rule the world. Okay, simple as that. As long as men want to keep believing they do, continue to believe it, but it's not true. Women rule the world. And I will tell you, I've raised my daughter as a princess because she will be a queen one day. But when I looked at this little girl in the tub, she was so sad. The eyes were so dark and sad. And I said to Reese, she's never going to smile. And she got out of the tub. She put on her little pink robe and she walked into her new bedroom. And Reese had laid three brand new nightgowns on the bed. And she walked over. She picked one of the nightgowns up. She picked it up. She tore the tag off of it and she turned around and she smiled at me. And I said, Amaya, why are you smiling? And she said, Mr. Rob, I've never owned a new pair of pajamas before. Wow. My friend, that's unacceptable. It's not acceptable that kids come into a system because of a choice that someone else made, and we can't even give them a brand new pair of pajamas. But for me, it was about being a dad. Month one, month two, month three goes by, phone rings. Hey, Mr. Scheer. I was like, hey. They said, guess what? I said, what? They said, we got two more kids. I said, two more. I was like, I already have two kids. And they said, we know, but we have two more. We have a little boy who is 2 and his brother who is 6 months. And they're actually going to be fast tracked for adoption. And by the way, their mother was 12 when she gave birth to the first one, 13 when she gave birth to the second. And oh, yes, they came into the system with bleeding of the brain, shaken baby syndrome, and 3 broken ribs. And when the baby was 3 months old, she took a razor blade and carved her boyfriend's initials in him. I said, I'll see you at 7 o'clock. I went home and Reese was in the kitchen. He was cooking dinner for Amaya and Makai. And I told Reese about these 2 boys. And Reese was like, Rob, we have got to talk about this. We have 2 kids and we both are working full time. And he was like, I was like, okay, that's fine. We have just until 7 o'clock.
Because we're there, we're getting them.
Because the doorbell's ringing and it's 7 o'clock. The doorbell rang and there were my babies, my son Grayson, who was 2, and our baby Tristan, who was 6 months. And again, they had trash bags. But you know what? The fact is that we became 2 dads with 4 kids in diapers. And I will remind everyone, ladies, you had 9 months. Don't you ever think gays are not overachievers. We had 4 in 3 months. So
Hey, point taken. Okay, we
point
did. I
taken.
prepare laying there, being like, oh, yeah.
I've had people laugh at that, but I've also had people get upset with that because I'm just like, come on, I'm not like
No,
kidding. I'm just like,
no,
you
you
know,
have
it's
to
like,
prepare.
but,
There's a lot of
but yeah,
thinking.
it was like all of a sudden we had 4 kids. And I remember like, you know, oh my, it was like a year into having the kids. And then we started to file for adoption because, you know, the kids, you know,
Oh,
again, at the end of the day, if a child ends up in foster care, we've already failed. Okay. And for my kids, you know, I just had made a decision, a conscious decision that our children were not going to linger in a system waiting for adults to do adulting. And so
oh,
we gave the birth parents a year
okay.
to get their acts together, and it never happened. Visits never happened, classes were never taken. And I remember after the year I said to the social worker, this is enough. We have been to
Yeah.
court every 6 weeks. Reese and I show up every 6 weeks. Birth parents are never there. I was like, you guys keep dragging this on. When will these kids be able to move within their lives? And I remember the
Yes.
social worker saying, um, this takes time. And I looked at her and said, excuse me, children do not have an opportunity to wait while we decide to be adults. And by the way, if you're going to play the game, get in it and play it. So what did Reese and I do? We hired our own attorney and we filed adoption for our children. And the social worker said, you're going to lose this case. And when you lose, they will take these 4 kids from you. And I looked at the social worker and I said, I'll tell you this right now. It will be the saddest day in my life when I lose our 4 kids. But at the same time, when my kids are older and they come back and find me, the thing
It,
I will be able to say to them is that I fought for you. I fought for you. So we did. We went in for the fight. We hired bonding study experts. We had to hire experts that would let the courts know that two white gay men were not going to change my three boys, make them gay. That
Yeah.
just because we were two white men did not mean that we did not know how to raise four black kids. And after 4 days of, trial, back and forth, the judge ruled, and we were told we would be the parents to
Oh,
Amaya, Makai, Grayson, and Tristan. And that moment was unbelievable because the first thing I did, went out and got passports for all my kids.
you're like,
Um,
let's go
let's
have
do it.
an amazing life
Let's do
together.
it. You now are no longer part of a shattered system. You're a Sheer. And with that, they got passports and designer clothes. And I failed, though, Bree. You can sit and think that, but I failed. See, I was so worried about making sure that my children had all the things that I didn't have as a young boy that I forgot the most important thing. See, the thing that we must understand is as parents, our responsibility is to do two things for our children. Number one, teach them empathy. See, the fact is, empathy is not in our DNA. It's taught. And I realize that I've been raising some privileged kids, but also their legacy. See, the thing is that our legacy is about what we give, not what we take. And for me, that was a failure. And I remember my husband walking into my office 13 years ago. And by the way, my husband actually gave his career up a year after the kids arrived. Um, and it was the funniest thing. So my I we had come home picking kids up from daycare and after school and all that, got to the house, and it was the typical, two
Yeah.
parents
Yeah.
working, wake up early in the morning,
You get
rushing around
snacks,
for
you go get baked.
breakfast and
Yep.
school drop off. And are you
Coffee.
picking them up today? Am I
Yeah, yeah,
picking them
yeah.
up today? And I remember Reese had come to my office, and he was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, what? I was like, I've already explained to you that
Which thing?
I'm going to let you know that you're not going to leave this unless you're in a box. And he was like, I don't want to go to work. He was like, I go to work, and he's like, and all I think about is Makai and Tristan and Amaya and Grayson and what and I said, Reese, what do you want to do? And he says, I want to be a stay-at-home dad. And I was like, what? And he was like, I want to be a stay-at-home dad. I was like, that's not for me.
You're
And he
like,
said, I know. And I
you,
said,
boo.
listen, I said, honey, if that's what you want to do, I was like, we'll change our budget and we'll figure it out. And that's what we did. And my husband became a stay-at-home dad over 16 years ago. And so
Oh,
13 years ago, he walked into my office and he was like, okay, it's time to do the toy drive. And by the way, Brie, we used to do this toy drive in
yeah,
DC. Everybody talked about it. We had celebrities and
yeah,
politicians and everybody gave toys. Like the last toy drive we had during that time, we collected like 2,500 toys in one day.
amazing.
It was well known in DC. And I said, no, I said, I don't want to do it. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, we failed our kids. And he said, what are you talking about? Our kids are amazing. And I said, no, Reese. I said, we forgot to teach them empathy and we forgot to teach them their legacy. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I pulled out a trash bag and I laid it on my desk. And see, the fact is I don't allow it to go far away from me. I don't want to forget where I came from, and I don't want my children to be embarrassed for where they came from. And I said, Reese, I want to eliminate these in foster care. He said, you are BS crazy. I said, I know, that's why you married me. I said, we could do this. So we gathered members of our church, local politicians, my senior staff, and I shared the story. The story that I shared with all your listeners and viewers about the 12-year-old little boy who was given no hope, the 12-year-old little boy who was put on a pathway that was totally going to make him not succeed, but he chose to succeed anyway. About the four kids who arrived at a home of strangers with no more than a bag of trash. And how I wanted to grab a backpack. And in that backpack, I wanted to put a brand new pair of pajamas with a tag on it. I wanted every child to get their own lotion, their own shampoo, their own conditioner, and their own bar of soap. See, kids walk into a house of strangers. We expect them to assimilate like that, but we will not even stay in a hotel and use a used bar of soap from the people before us. Why? It's called dignity. Dignity. Children deserve that dignity. Then I want every kid to get a toothbrush and toothpaste because, by the way, my beautiful teeth, and you know my teeth are beautiful. They cost me an arm and a leg. They cost me so much money because when I was in the system, and just like kids today, people don't talk about dental hygiene. It's not something that's talked
Ah,
about. So I want
no.
kids to have a toothbrush and toothpaste. Then I want every kid to get an activity because I know that 90% of our kids in foster care come in the back of a police cruiser. I also know that they're put into holding centers. We call them rainbow rooms, light bright, whatever the hell you want to call it. They're no more than holding cells. These kids go in there with broken toys, broken crayons, and I want these kids to know that they're loved by a community. And so we give them coloring books and crayons, brand new, for kids under the age of 10, and kids over the age of 10, they get a journal and a pen and pencil set. Then we make sure all of our girls over the age of 10 get a menstrual kit. And by the way, everybody, without a menstrual cycle, we would not be here. It is important that we empower our young women to understand that a menstrual cycle is something that should be in our vocabulary, our conversation, and make it more readily for women and young girls.
You.
Because for me,
Yes.
as my daughter, I could not imagine my daughter walking into a house of strangers on the very first night she started her period. And so, what we've done here at Comfort Cases is not only do we give them a menstrual kit with wipes and pads, we also got together with a bunch of smart people and we designed a pamphlet that actually talks about their menstrual cycle, about their heavy flows and their light flows, and how to use their wipes and their pads. Because I truly think it's so, so important that we empower our young women to know that having a menstrual cycle is nothing to be ashamed of. And by the way, also, Brie, I make my boys go into CVS and buy my daughter tampons because I do think that women deserve to have allies as men for their
Thank
menstrual
you.
cycle. And then I
Amazing.
give every single kid a stuffed animal because I don't care whether you're a newborn or you're 59, we all love a good
It
stuffy.
always makes you feel good.
It does. It makes you smile. And then finally, my son Grayson, he was 5 when we packed our very first case. He's now 18. He said, Daddy, we have to put a blankie in every case. And I was like, a blankie? I was like, Grayson, these kids aren't cold. He said, he said, I know, Daddy, but every time they wrap themselves up in their blankie, they know we love them. Wow. Brie, isn't that what we all want? We want to be loved. We want to know
That's
we
it.
matter. And with that, we packed a case and another and another. And because of amazing people who are listening to this podcast and tuning in, we have packed and delivered over 300,000 cases. We have delivered them to all 50 states, DC, and Puerto Rico. And I know I don't need to remind your smart viewers and listeners, Puerto Rico belongs to us. Yes, it's surrounded by water, but so is Hawaii.
Yeah.
See, what we must take away is to understand that our forefathers, again, they built our communities not for our
Yep.
bushes to match, but to take care of each other.
And that is the story of how comfort cases started
Was born,
to change the lives of all those kids and then all the people they interact with and
changed my life.
oh,
So the
yeah,
crazy thing is, in 2019, I decided to when my book was released, I decided to give up my career
uh-huh.
and become a public speaker. And I remember telling my husband that I was going to leave my cushy job, and he reminded me that I was the breadwinner of the family. Um,
You're like,
and
I know.
I remember I said to him, I said, I don't want a job anymore. I want a purpose. I want a purpose. And my purpose is to go around the country and educate people about kids like me. My purpose is to make sure that children in foster care know that there is one person on this earth that is going to shout out on the tallest mountain that we are here. We are here. See us. Understand us, and also realize that when you invest in us, you actually are investing in your future because we are your leaders of tomorrow.
You are an incredible voice for them, and you're a gift from God in what you're doing. In what you're doing, you are literally like shouting out to God's children that are like, help me. And you're being like, I'm coming for you. I love you. And I've got a team and resources and a beautiful, it's about so much that case, the comfort case. Yes, logistically you feel, but that's a core memory in their life forever because of what you're doing. That's what
Better believe it.
you are. I'm getting a chill.
Yeah. And you know what, Bree, I know I've talked a long time, but I got to tell you,
No,
I promised myself in 2019 I would never leave a platform without telling one more quick story.
go for it.
See, the thing is that I had was out on a book tour and I was coming back to the East Coast, and my assistant had emailed me and said that she wanted me to go speak at a local high school, and I was like, "Ugh, I'm so tired." I was like, can we reschedule? She's like, "No, you said you would never say no to a high school," and she was right. I said I
You're
never
like,
would. And I walked into this high school and I gave a talk, the talk that I shared with you.
yeah.
And a young boy I could see was getting emotional. And afterwards, all the kids left. And the young boy walked up to me and he said, "Mr. Scheer, will you sign my book?" I said, "Of course. What is your name?" He said, "Alex." I said, "Alex, tell me something about yourself." He says, "I have nothing to tell." I said, "Alex, we all have a story." He said, "No, Mr. Scheer, my story is like yours. I've been in foster care since I was 5. I've been in 11 homes, 6 schools. I'm 18 years old and I'm getting ready to age out. I'm going to be homeless just like you." Ah, that hit me so hard, Brie. And I
Oh,
handed him my business card. I said, "Alex, I want you to call me. We're going to figure this out." I looked at the principal and she had a tear going down her eye. And she said, "Mr. Shear, Alex has a 3.6 and he's falling through the cracks of child welfare." And I was just like, "What?" And so I said, "Please make sure he calls me." I went home that night and I told Reese and the kids about meeting this young boy. And my son Makai said, "Daddy, if he calls, invite him to our house for dinner." And I was like, "What a good idea." And the next day, Alex called me and I said, "Alex," I was like, he was like, "Hey, Mr. Shear, this is Alex. Do you remember me?" I was like, "I'm not that old."
yeah.
Um, I was like, "Alex, give me the phone, give me the number to your foster parents." I was like, "I'm going to call them and invite you to our house on Saturday for dinner." And he was like, "You mean I get to meet the family you wrote about in your book?" I said, "No, I have a fake family." Cheating.
It's a-
So I picked Alex up on that Saturday. I brought him to our house. I saw him playing in the backyard with our kids. And Reese was like, "You know what? Let's go out to dinner tonight." And I was like, "What a good idea." And so we gathered the kids up in the suburban. We went down to the local Mexican restaurant. We eat at least once a week. And
yeah.
we sit down, and my son Tristan was 10 at the time. And he looked at Alex and he said, "Alex, you can order anything off the menus, and my dads don't care." And he was like, "I can order anything?" And my son was like, "I'm going to get the shrimp fajitas. And if I don't eat them all, I never get in trouble." And my daughter looked at Alex and said, "Alex, haven't you been to Guapo's?" And Alex looked at my daughter and said, "I don't remember the last time someone took me to a restaurant." Bree, at that moment, as a dad, I realized I'd done my job. I saw the empathy
The empathy.
flow out of my children's eyes. We ate, went to Dave and Buster's. We dropped Alex off at his foster parents' house. I get into the car and it's silent. And all of a sudden, one of my kids say, "Daddy, we have to do something for Alex." I said, "Guys, I know. Daddy just doesn't know what to do." And one of my kids said, "Daddy, we got to bring him home." And I said, "What?" And they said, "We have to bring him home." And I looked at my husband, and my husband said, "What's one more?" My husband and I were the very first couple in the state of Maryland to petition the courts to have a child from foster care live with us without a stipend. The judge looked at me and said, "Mr. Shear, why would you do this?" I say to the judges, I say to each and every one of you, every child deserves a foundation. Every child deserves to know there's someone there rooting them on. Every child deserves to know what it feels like to be loved unconditionally. I looked at my son and he was crying. He said, "Pops, you've changed my life." I said, "No, Alex, you've changed our lives." I said, "I only have one regret." The judge said, "Mr. Shear, what is your regret?" I said, "I didn't get to walk him to kindergarten, but now I get to walk with him for the rest of his life." My husband and I legally adopted Alex a year later. My kids are now 25, 21, 19, 18, and 17. Thank you.
And that's the beauty of life and what you're doing. That's incredible. And I just want to thank you as somebody who is just being connected to incredible people like you who are sharing really tough stuff and then sharing the beauty behind like looking at your pain and asking for help. And then what you've done for these kids is incredible, for our future, for them, for human to human. As somebody who like feels that deeply, I'm just like really grateful, that you've crossed my path.
Well, I'm grateful you crossed
Yeah,
my path as well, my friend. I
yeah,
really am. And again, thank you for this platform. Thank you for making the impact because, again, as you and I both know, sometimes we don't know how the ripple effect actually
no,
is. But I
No.
will say this much, I meet kids all over this country and now all over the world because we are international now. We serve 84,000 children in the United Kingdom. But what I hear from kids all the time is they always say to me, Mr. Rob, why? And I say, why what? And they say, why does someone give me all this new stuff? I look at the kids as I say to you and all your viewers and listeners as we end this. Always remember, you do not have to know someone to love someone. You don't.
Beautiful. It's a great way to close. I'm going to keep that in mind.
Thank you.
And of course, and please, everybody listening, look at the show notes, link to your beautiful organization, Comfort Cases, link to your Instagram, link to your Amazon memoir, link to all of the CNN heroes. You've been on Ellen. I'm just going to name drop. I'm sorry. You're amazing. He's been on all the things. And then he decided to come over to my little neck of the
Of course. Oh,
podcast
please. You're
world. I'm
So
like
we
a
just had an
mom.
HBO. For those who
Yeah.
love so if you have HBO Max, you can tune in to somewhat familiar new documentary that was dropped in November. Episode 5 is about the Scheer family and our amazing organization, comfortcases.org. And if you have
Cool.
Apple, head over to Apple and watch Dads, DADS, which was directed by my amazing friend, Bryce Dallas Howard from Jurassic Park.
Yes.
And I was in this documentary with her and her father, the amazing Ron Howard, Opie.
Look at me. I'm like,
So yeah, if you have Apple, just go head over there and watch Dads as well. But yeah, thank you again, Bree, for this platform.
hey, you're welcome. Thank you. And we are going to be connected. I'm going to be bothering you for quite
Let's
a
do
while.
it.
And by the way, my daughter's name is Reese. Just saying.
Is it with a C or an S?
S.
S. Okay, so my
Yeah.
my husband's name is Maurice.
Maurice.
But when I met him, he was like, my name's Maurice. I was like, and by the way, I'd never met a white Maurice before, so I was just like,
No.
"Where are you lying?" First, I thought he was lying to me.
Okay.
But no, they all call him, and it's with a C. But our youngest son, Tristan, his name is Tristan. His middle name is Reese, but it's RHYS. It's
Ooh,
the Welsh version.
REESE. So.
Oh, see, I
Oh.
love that. I love it. Well, listen, I got to run to another interview,
Oh.
but Bree, thank you, everybody. Hey,
Thank
make
you,
this year the
everyone.
most
He's amazing.
impactful year.
All
Yes,
right.
yes.
We will talk
Take
soon.
care, my friend.
Thank
Bye bye.
you.